Hello and welcome, bookworms. Welcome to this week's episode of The Contented Narrative. I'm looking at The Key in the Lock by Beth Underdown. Now, this book was bought for me by my beautiful husband. Well, sorry, my handsome husband for Christmas. And basically, we follow Ivy, and it's set during the First World War, and it's also got sort of like flashback episodes to the 1800s. And Ivy loses her son, and on her journey to kind of find out what happened to her son, because all it said was killed in action, and she thought that was like there was a misunderstanding about, did he commit suicide? Had he had enough? Did he deliberately die? Was it something that she could have done? You know, and so you follow Ivy. She's dealing with this in her life, and then she flashes back to the death of another boy, like a child, and the aftermath of what happened at this hall, and the aftermath of what she was a witness to. And honestly, sometimes I find when I'm reading books that are set so far in the past, I sometimes find that the language and the way the story is written, I find it quite hard to get into. I find it quite hard to, you know, get past certain bits, and it's a bit jarring. But this one was so beautifully written, and I just sat back, and it was only a couple of 100 pages long, and I just sat back, curled up, and I just read it, and it was just so good, and it was so beautifully done. And yeah, there's a little bit of intrigue, there's a little bit of mystery, and you've got the main character as well, like obviously not Ivy, but the person that she's been crushing on since she was a teenager. We've all been there. When she finds out like more about him and his life and everything, when they reconnect after the death of her son, it's such a good read, and the characters are so well written, and like you feel for them. And you know, even when she finds out that this sum of money has been going to this Mrs. Smith, but can't find out who this Mrs. Smith is that her husband's been paying for years. And she basically gives him the silent treatment. It's like, no, I've been faithful to you. I've been this, I've been this, I've been this. And then when you find out who Mrs. Smith is and why the husband has done what he's done, it's just like, do you know what I mean? It just brings you a sense of like, everything about the story, the way the characters are written, the way that the main character sort of like views herself. Because as well, there's some things that should say where it's like, oh yeah, no, it's not proper to be seen with. And I was like, mate, I'm out all the time. Like, do you know what I mean? I interact with other males. Like, do you know what I mean? It's not improper. And then I was like, no. So sometimes I will say, sometimes I had to really reel myself back in to the time period that it was in. And I think that's a really good sort of like view of the book, that it was so well written that sometimes I genuinely forgot that it was set during the First World War and then late 1800s. So it was, I mean, like when you get to the ending, when you like, it's very satisfying ending, and you kind of sat there and you're like, yes, Ivy, I'm so proud of you, of who you are, and honestly, I don't even know why I added this to my Amazon wishlist. I think I may have seen it once and I was like, oh, it seems like a good idea. But I'm so glad I did, because sometimes, and they always say don't judge a book by its cover, but I don't know why, but this cover just called to me. I loved the design. But I would definitely say give this a read, because honestly, it is just, it haunts you a little bit, and you're sat there and you're really thinking about it. And when you find out exactly what's happened and every character in this book, you kind of like, oh, and it sits with you, and it's a really, really, really good book. So I would say please give this a read. Obviously, if it's not your cup of tea, that's not a problem. If you can't read period pieces, again, that's not a problem. But let me know if you did read it. Let me know if you enjoyed it. But thank you so much for your continued support. And remember to always keep it contento.